to do. I'm serious about this. I think you've got to stay with what's possible, and I think what we're doing, and look at the dust up around this. We really need to consolidate our gains around what we've got on this.
But you do support single payer, do you not?
No, what I've got right now.
You've written repeatedly that you have you not?
I think you need to go back and take a look at what
This was 2012. Direct question: do you support single payer? Warren's answer: no. Well, you have supported it. You need to go back and look at my record, sir. Fair enough. I take her at her word. She does not support single payer in 2012. 2016, fast forward. In 2016, she is supporting a candidate who is actively vilifying Medicare for all and the notion of single payer health care, Hillary Clinton. She is still in association with Hillary Clinton today, and they're working in back channels with one another, as exposed by mainstream media. But my point is, she supported somebody who's actively vilifying Medicare for all in lieu of somebody who she's supposed to be ideologically closer to. Fast forward to 2020, and now she's for Medicare for all. And, it's amazing how evolution takes place and how fast evolution takes place when there's an election afoot. And you need to get through a Democratic primary with an electorate that really wants certain gains that they don't believe the Democratic Party has been pushing for. Elizabeth Warren has finally published her Medicare for All plan. And the reason I'm using air quotes is because Medicare for All is very specific in what it is. And lefties have been very critical of Warren on this particular front because they felt her language is so diffuse and so politically charged that what she's calling Medicare for All may not in fact necessarily be Medicare for All. I think after reading her document, I can explain why this is taking place. Meaning, I can explain how she looks at the Medicare for All thing. And I have to be honest, the air quotes are necessary because what she's calling Medicare for All may not necessarily, in fact, be Medicare for All. Elizabeth Warren finally, I don't know why it took so long, publishes her Medicare for All plan. I want to talk about it. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content and you find yourself coming back here often, please like this video, share this video, and of course, subscribe. We are growing. The show is expanding. Also, if you really dig it and you really find yourself coming back here often, please consider supporting this content through PayPal or Patreon. Of course, there's also Super Chats. Medicare for All. Elizabeth Warren got a lot of credit from lefties, myself included, in standing on that debate stage in this full-throated support of Medicare for All and pushing back the likes of Delaney, the small minds, and ribbing him pretty abruptly and brutally in that debate, meaning she added to Sanders in that debate, and both of them, in this kind of foxhole thing pushing back, gave this notion that she was for Medicare for All. Medicare for All, however, is a very specific thing. It's a bill. She's the signatory of that bill. And yet, in the document she published today, that is not in the bill. That is not in the document. Her document is politically charged. Ultimately, what she's calling Medicare for All in this document, Kamala Harris's plan could fit in that document. In fact, pretty much any Democrat's plan that's running today could fit within the context of the document that Elizabeth Warren put up for today. Essentially, Medicare for All is a goal that we need to reach for. And there are certain contradictions, even in the context of the document, that in afterthought, I don't even believe necessarily are contradictions. I think it kind of fits into what I think her strategy or her perspective of Medicare for All is. And yeah, technically, it's not necessarily Medicare for All. It's more Medicare for All in theory, but maybe not necessarily in practice. And there may be something else that she will accept as quote unquote Medicare for All. That's why I keep using the quotations around it. She's not necessarily advocating for anything specific per se. Yes, she signed her name on the Bernie Sanders plan, but that's more so in theory. I would support this in theory. If Congress gave me a bill that was Medicare for all, I would sign it. But theory is a little bit different than practice, meaning if you're talking about something other than Medicare for all, then you shouldn't call it Medicare for all because it is not. What Kamala Harris is not pushing for is Medicare for all, despite the fact that she calls it Medicare for all. And I make the point that Elizabeth Warren is doing something similar. It's not that she's, and two things are true at once. It's not that she's not necessarily against Medicare for all. In theory, she's for it, which is where I think the wishy-washiness comes about. So, for example, this is CNN. This is a town hall. Listen to the way she answers this question.
And then when we talk about Medicare for all, there are a lot of different pathways. What we're all looking for is the lowest cost way to make sure everybody gets covered. And some folks are talking about, let's start lowering the age. Maybe bring it down to 60, 55, 50. That helps cover people who are most at risk and can be helpful, for example, to the labor's plans. Some people say, do it the other way. Let's bring it up from everybody under 30 gets covered by Medicare. Others say, let employers be able to buy into the Medicare plans.
Right there. That's not Medicare for all. That's something else. I don't know what that is, but that's not Medicare for all. That is something else. Let it continue.
Others say, let's let employees buy into the Medicare.
Again, that's not Medicare for all. That's something else. I hope you get my point. Meaning, even in this particular speech, her point is, yes, in theory, I'm for Medicare for all. I have no issue with it at all. I would sign it if it was put on my desk. However, there may be other paths and other ways that we can go about reaching this particular reality. Fair enough. If you are technically for the bill, fair enough, but people's issue here is there's a certain wishy-washiness because the other things that you just talked about had nothing to do with Medicare for all. And Medicare for all, again, is a specific bill. I'm not dinging her for being against or for Medicare for all. My point is, if you're not for it, then just say you're not for it and come up with your own plan and your own bill. She is not doing that, however. She's being wishy-washy. And this is why lefties are concerned. This other stuff is not Medicare for all. However, she's continuously using the term and the language Medicare for all. Here's another point. Dave Weigel, and that first video where she's talking about things that are not Medicare for all. Dave Weigel in August tweets this. Another Medicare for all question from a retiree who doesn't want his coverage to change too much. Warren says Medicare for all is a quote-unquote goal and pivots back to the crackdown on private profits. Again, lefties are concerned because she comes across as wishy-washy. And again, Medicare for all is a specific thing in objective reality. Using the term Medicare for all has a certain political context where people use it, but is not referring to the specific bill. There is a bill underlying this reality. And if people are using the term while not necessarily dealing with the bill itself, then they're talking about something else with the hopes of confusing people and getting them to latch their mind onto something that they're running with that is not, in fact, Medicare for all. It's like calling soy milk milk. Well, it's not. It's out of a bean. It's not really milk, even though they want to give the people this kind of association and connotation with milk. Here's another point. Her own bill. Not bill, I'm sorry. Her own proposal. This is what she just released. Healthcare is a basic human right. Healthcare is a basic human right. We fight for the basic human right. Elizabeth Warren won't stop fighting until everyone is covered and no one goes broke paying medical bills or filling a prescription. Add your name below. All right, great. Sign up. Now, this goes into a lot of fluff that doesn't matter, but Elizabeth Warren supports Medicare for all, which will provide all Americans with a public health care program. Medicare for all is the best way to give every single person in the country guaranteed high-quality health care. Everybody is covered. Nobody goes broke because of the medical bills. No more fighting with insurance companies. All right. What she said there does not conflict at all with what she said here. But what she said here is not Medicare for all. I hope you get my point. What she said before was political language. If you are supporting Medicare for all, then you should say that, and you should say that, meaning you should add the bill to this document. But the Medicare for all bill, the real bill, is not to be found in this document. One more time. What she's saying here It's not Medicare for all. It's meaning, yes, in theory, I could accept Medicare for all, but there are all sorts of ways of things that I would accept and that she would call Medicare for all, even though it's not technically Medicare for all because it's not the bill that Sanders wrote. Weigel, Warren, Medicare for all is a quote-unquote goal. That's like the typical Democrat language of, yes, having everybody covered is a goal that we're going to incrementally go towards. It's the same language. It's just coming out of Warren. The difference here is Warren is saying, yes, theoretically, I can support Medicare for all. But then pivots back to crack down on private profits. Clearly the least tricky part of the pitch. So again, she's waffling on the Medicare for all thing. This is what lefties are pissed off about or annoyed about. She published her plan. Nothing she said here in this speech, some of which was not Medicare for all, is contradicted by anything she's saying here. The basic business model of an insurance company is to take as much money as you can in premiums. And again, this part is true. And premiums, that leaves the families with rising premiums, high deductibles, and fighting with insurance companies to try to get the health care that the doctors say them and their children need. Insurers protect their bottom line, restrict networks of providers, and stand in a way when you want to see your doctor or need to see a specialist without going broke. Medicare for all solves these problems. Everyone can see the doctor they need. Nobody goes broke and your doctor gets paid by Medicare instead of fighting with an insurance company. Every American should be able to get the care they need when they need it. This is a goal worth fighting for, and Elizabeth Warren is in this fight all the way. That's why Warren will fight for Medicare for all. But again, what does that mean? Kamala Harris's plan would fit under what was said there. You're creating a healthcare system, a Medicare for all, expanding it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting rid of private insurers. There could be people who buy into that particular thing, or an employer buys into that particular system, but private insurers still exist. I guess my point is, this is not really Medicare for all, because if it was, she would just say Medicare for all, meaning given the bill. This is a political casting of Medicare for all. This is a definition of the problem with this notion that we are going to fight for and try to get everybody covered through Medicare for all. However, it's a political Medicare for all, not the actual bill. The actual bill is something that exists, an objective reality. This is more of a theoretical thing that she's willing to push for. I hope you get the difference in those things. This is not technically Medicare for all, because if it was, she would just say the bill itself. One last point. Right here. Mental health. There's a contradiction here. And maybe it's not a contradiction at all, because if my first point is right, Warren is saying multiple things. Yes, theoretically, I am for Medicare for all. However, there are multiple paths to get everybody covered. And in exploring some of those paths, I'm willing to do that. The catch is some of those paths aren't Medicare for all at all. But she's going with a theoretical thing. Elizabeth Warren has a policy for everything, but there is no policy for this per se, because she's not giving you a policy. She's giving you theoretical ideas that she may support. In addition to the right physical health care, we must prioritize affordable, high-quality mental health services. Despite the widespread need for these services, many Americans are denied coverage. Elizabeth's Behavioral Health Care Transparency Act. Jesus Christ. Elizabeth's Behavioral Health Coverage Transparency Act will hold insurers accountable for providing adequate mental health benefits to ensure Americans receive the protections they are guaranteed by law. A slip of the tongue, is it? What do you mean? If you have Medicare for all, this process doesn't exist. Meaning, under the Behavioral Health Coverage Transparency Act, insurers accountable. There are no insurers in Medicare for all. It's not a situation where insurers deny or provide coverage in this case, because Medicare for all would be providing that coverage. Again, a contradiction in this notion of pushing for Medicare for all. I think the thing here is what I said before. Ultimately, Elizabeth Warren is looking at Medicare for All as an objective to reach. And there may be many ways of getting to that particular objective. So in a conversation, she can argue, yes, I am theoretically for Medicare for All. She can also argue, which I strongly suspect she would do once she gets out of the primaries, that there are ways to get to this that don't necessarily require us dealing with the exact bill that's Medicare for All. Meaning she's willing to go different routes, and those different routes are not the actual bill of Medicare for All, while simultaneously screaming about that she's okay with and pushing for Medicare for All. It's disingenuous. I don't trust Warren. If Warren is for Medicare for All, this segment of the document would not exist. It just wouldn't. I mean, think for yourself. How can you have insurers? How do you hold insurers accountable when insurers wouldn't be a part of a system for Medicare for All for mental health, because mental health would just come a part of Medicare for All? Insurers would not exist in this process if, indeed, we're talking about Medicare for All. My contention here is that we're not talking about Medicare for All in the proper sense. We're talking about Medicare for All in a political sense. There's a difference in those things. If Warren was indeed for Medicare for All, this doesn't exist. This document is entirely consistent with this performance.
To the labor's plans. Some people say do it the other way. Let's bring it up from everybody under 30 gets covered by Medicare. Others say let employers be able to buy into the Medicare plans. Others say let's let employees buy into the Medicare plans. For me, what's key is we get everybody at the table on this, that labor's at the table, that people who have to buy on their own, everybody comes to the table together, and we figure out how to do Medicare for All in a way that makes sure that we're going to get 100% coverage.
That's not Medicare for All. I guess I hope you get my point that what I'm saying here, and I know I'm repeating it because I want to make sure it's clear. There are ways that people talk about things sometimes that are politically charged or politically motivated, meaning it allows fudge in the language. It's a technicality that allows a certain gray area in the way that the person talks about it. For example, Brexit. What does Brexit mean? Who knows? Labour has his own idea of Brexit. Boris Johnson has his own idea of Brexit. If I draw a circle on a page, you draw 1,000 circles. All of them are circles. All of them are different sizes. The politics has a way of using language in the same way. It's sketchy. It's slippery. She can get on the stage and say, yes, I support Medicare for All. It's a theoretical support of Medicare for All. By the same token, there are other elements of things that she is willing to support that are not technically Medicare for All. Medicare for All is a specific plan that you either support or you don't. And if you don't support, give your own specific plan that you are willing to support so people can compare it against. This language is slippery. The document itself, again, doesn't bring up Medicare for All. It brings up a political Medicare for All in quotations. There's a difference in those things. If you're for it, say you're for it. Otherwise, stop using the terminology. But again, that's the point, right? The point is to be able to use the terminology while simultaneously being able to float into other items. Meaning, Kamala Harris saying, I'm for Medicare for All. Is she really? But Kamala Harris at the very least gave you a plan where you can compare it against. Buttigieg, all of these guys. Medicare for people with bad backs, Medicare buy-ins, Medicare this, Medicare that. And for all intents and purposes, Warren, based on this plan, could be supportive of several of those because several of those would fit under this umbrella. None of those, however, fit the model of Medicare for All, even though she may technically be on board for Medicare for All if it hits her desk. I hope you get it. It's both. She's dancing on the head of a pin. She's doing both at the same time. Yes, I'm for Medicare for All, but I'm also for these other things. So when I talk about it, I'm talking about it in broad strokes as opposed to giving a very specific plan, because from her mind, there are multiple paths. She's been consistent on it. What people find dodgy and what they find to be waffling is because it's not so much that she's against the specific Medicare for All plan. It's more those that she's not using that plan exclusively she may accept something that's not Medicare for all. Buyer beware. I strongly suspect she's going to pivot to the right. And she's going to say, I never said that I was exclusively supporting Bernie Sanders' plan. Pivot. Pivot. Just saying. I'm not going to keep this long. I'm putting Elizabeth Warren's Medicare for All plan at the bottom. You can read it for yourself. If I'm wrong on this, let me know, but I don't see Bernie Sanders' plan in this. Vague, non-specific, non-single payer, non-Medicare for all healthcare plan. She has a bill for that. She's all in for that. GoFundMe, hashtag GoFundMe, hashtag Insurer funded. Yeah, that's not Medicare for all. That's my point. Beltazar, yes, you're right. If indeed Elizabeth Warren was for Medicare for all, this passage just would not exist. Think for yourself. Don't take my word for it. How can you have Medicare for all while simultaneously holding insurers accountable for providing adequate mental health benefits when really insurers in a Medicare for all system would not exist? That's a problem. That's a problem, Liz. That's a problem. Let the cat out of the bag. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all. By the way, I have an interview that is coming up like right now, so I need to end this. It is a libertarian socialist. When I find the channel, I'll give you guys a link for it. But like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.